How come the reason for modesty and tznius in dress is to help men not do avedus? What about women? Why should they suffer because of the men? In other words, if there were no men on the planet, women would know halachas of tznius, but because men are very affected by what they see far more than women are, and if they see images that make them have certain thoughts, it distracts them and leads them to bad places. Therefore, women have to cover up, so men shouldn't go down that road. I think it's a great simplification of the halachas of tznius. Tznius has many layers and levels. On the most basic level, the idea that a human being uses their body as a way of drawing attention to themselves is very self-cheapening. A human being's greatness is their mind, is their heart, is their actions, not their physical appearance. And when people dress in the kind of way that they're drawing attention to their body, which is very American, it's part of our culture. It's very, very self-denigrating. It's very diminishing of self. It's a very superficial self-identity. And that's a part of tznius too. In addition, in general, human beings are not supposed to call attention to themselves. Human beings' self-respect should be such that I don't define myself by the fact that other people notice me. And again, in America, it is all about being noticed, which is why in America, tznius is such a huge issue, because when you live in a society where everybody is showing off, and you've lived in a society for 1 generation, 2 generations, 3 generations, 4 generations, that becomes your new normal, and you begin to see yourself by how other people observe you superficially, and it leads you to want to get people to look at you, and it diminishes us, man and woman, if we define ourselves by that. I always tell my students that there's 2 issues with tznius. One is that you want to look pretty, and therefore sometimes you draw a line that's not correct in tznius. And the other is you want to look like a goy. You want to look like an actor. You want to look like an entertainer. I think that's a much more sinister dimension of the tznius challenge, because this is not only about wanting to look good or even draw attention to yourself, but look like goy and goyishkeit. And on a deep level, that's wrong, because it's not just about tznius, it's just about being a Jew. And by definition, being a Jew means being different than our environment and not trying to define ourselves by the world around ourselves. But in terms of answering this question directly, the answer to the question is very simply because we all live on the same ship. There's one earth, right? What do people tell you when they talk about preservation of species and clean air and clean water? That as big as the earth is, it's one world, and we all have to live here together, and there has to be enough water, enough air, enough food for all of us, so we all are responsible for one another. The same is true when it comes to tznius. Assuming that the reason a woman has to dress modestly is not to gouge out the eyes of a man, like the rebbe uses the lashon girui, the answer to the question is because we're responsible for one another. And accordingly, there is an obligation on one person to behave in the kind of way that makes a life for another livable. The idea that women are suffering, I'm not a woman, so I can't speak to that, but I don't think that that's the issue. It's not about women suffering. It's about women defining what beauty is in a way that's tasteful and more subtle and more consistent with Torah. I just want to say this in conclusion. This question used to bother me also. Why does a woman have to be tznius because of a man? But then I saw a sikha from the Rebbe spoke to women where he actually spoke about this. And he mentioned the points that I just spoke of. Number one, defining yourself by your appearance, drawing attention to yourself by your physical looks, and how limited that is in terms of what a human being is. And he also spoke about girei, not to dress in a kind of way that draws attention to yourself from men, which is not healthy for them and not healthy for you. So the Rebbe says that it's emes, it's Torah. So there is an obligation on women to be tzanua, not just because of themselves, but because they're not allowed to put men into a test that is unusually difficult. But I want you to know that the Mittler Rebbe in the Achei Temimim talks about Shmiras Einayim of women. Everybody seems to say that tznius is a woman's issue. Women have to cover up so men shouldn't be distracted by them. But the Mittler Rebbe talks about the opposite, Shmiras Einayim of women, when it comes to men. And he actually associates a lack of Shmiras Einayim to a certain illness. And if you want to see what it is, you're going to have to take out the Achei Temimim and read it and find it. But certainly in today's generation, I don't think tznius is only a woman's issue. It's a human being's issue. And it's not only a question of covering up versus being uncovered. It's a question of defining yourself as a human being. In other words, how do I want people to view me? And it would be preferred if people would view you by your mind, by your character, by your good deeds, far less than your physical appearance.